has come with heavy heart. I go to my slumber, slipping away, I cling to the day. A tender voice, horizon is calling. Come to me, oh come to me. My light shines on, oh keep me from falling. Let me stay, bring back the day. No clouds to comfort me, no place to rest my head. To the sky, my last flames I give. Take the light and fear not the night, and may my fire hope and courage give to burn along. Remember my song. Twilight washes me away. Oh, why is time so cruel? Flames of gold leap out of the blue, fade away with the day, then spark the stars, wooing at the moon. Echoes of light shine in the night. Silver apples fill the sky to light the sun once more. Reach me down, my Tycho Brahe. must say goodbye, my pupil, for I cannot longer speak. Draw the curtain back for Venus, where my vision grows too weak. It is strange the pearly planet should look red as fiery Mars. God will mercifully guide me on my way amongst the stars.
Attention, soldiers, you are now entering the war zone. Please keep close to your compatriots and have your weapons at the ready. If you would like to skip the introduction, please fast forward to about 7.5 minutes. And now, Poets at War.
Once, there were 4 children, whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy.
Suppose I'm writing a novel. I write, Mary laid down her book. Next moment came a knock at the door. For Mary, who's got to live in the imaginary time of the story, there's no interval between putting down the book and hearing the knock. But I, her creator, between writing the first part of that sentence and the second, may have gone out for an hour's walk and spent the whole hour thinking about Mary.
We make things by the law in which we are made. We create because we are created.
In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit.
One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, in the darkness bind them.
Tolkien and Lewis, both in their way, lifted me out of this world to show me a thundering beauty. And when I read the last sentence and came tumbling back to earth, I could still hear the peal. I hear it to this day. God allowed those stories to lift the veil on the imaginary world to show me the real world behind it, which ended up being, in the end, the one I was already in. The real world, at least in part, isn't out there somewhere, nor is it in my mind. It's here, right under my feet, all around me. Tolkien and Lewis held the fabric of Narnia or Middle-earth in one hand and clutched our world in the other, building a bridge across which we could set out for perilous realms, and yet return safely with some of the beauty we found there.
My first and last philosophy, that which I believe in with unbroken certainty, I learnt in the nursery. I generally learnt it from a nurse, that is, from the solemn and star-appointed priestess at once of democracy and tradition. The things I believed most then, the things I believe most now, are the things called fairy tales.
We live in a moment that's unlike any other moment, a moment of bizarre tyranny, a moment of overreach.
I was nearly torn apart by a crazy doctor.
A moment of fear. It's like, and how are we living? How are we standing up in this moment?
I was made asleep by a bunch of mangy pirates.
Are we full of joy? Like, are we characters who are full of joy and unafraid?
And eaten. Got that? Eaten by a fire-breathing dragon. And not to mention being tossed, squashed, and scared practically to death.
It's like, how do we image God in this particular narrative in which we've been placed, in this chapter? And we get trained for that by reading about Sam and Frodo and Aragorn and Gandalf, and reading, Charlotte's Web and Animal Farm, and reading about Prince Caspian. Like, when you're little, you read those things and you read stories when you're older, and it reinforces what is the courageous action of a character in this moment.
Yet you stand before me.
Well, yeah.
Think, boy. What kind of an adventure would you have had if I brought you here with a turn of the page?
I wept bitterly, and then I said to myself, when everything happens quite miserably, then He sends help. I have always read so. People must first of all suffer a great deal before they can bring anything to accomplishment.
God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in time past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by His Son, whom He has appointed heir of all things, through whom also He made the worlds.
For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of Him who subjected it in hope, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body.
Minstrel boy to the war is gone. In the ranks of death you'll find him. His father's sword he hath girded on, and his wild harp slung behind him. God of song, said warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one faithful harp shall praise thee. The minstrel fell, but the foeman's chain could not bring that proud soul under. The harp he loved ne'er spoke again, for he tore its cords asunder, and said, no chain shall sully thee, thou soul of love and bravery. Thy songs were made for the pure and free, they shall never sound in slavery. upon the people came, and they gave away their freedom. The prophets left, they then grew lame, they accepted their false kingdom. But one young man saw the minstrel boy, and he took up the shredded strings, and with great love remade with joy the sacred tool for truth to sing.
And it started playing that again for some reason, which I'm unsure of. Actually, it doesn't appear to be coming through anything but my headphones, which is interesting. So I need to fix that.
It's also coming through.
Oh, it's okay. So it's coming through to you guys. So let me just do something with that really quickly. We are hearing the intro all over again, folks. You probably are not, from what I can tell. But yeah, still working out some kinks and stuff. Let's see. Is it that one? No.
Hey,
is it that one? Oh, that was it for you? Okay, so we'll turn.
Something.
There we go.
Something.
All right, that's fine. We did that.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so now it's us. And I need to make sure that you guys are coming through. Yeah, you guys are coming through. You weren't last time, but you are now. So we're in good shape. We're live, everybody. Sure. Yes, we are actually. I'm 100% sure of it.
Excellent.
I made sure to double check because there was like a minute or two at the beginning of last one where you guys were not coming through at all, and I felt so bad. But yeah, it worked out. It worked out, and we're just working out the kinks as we go on this here live audio show. So appreciate you guys being here. I don't see any other concurrent viewers at the moment, but we'll get some more as we go. Looking forward to it. Please, if you come in, you want to comment, you can share us on social media. That would be fantastic. Get the word out. You can also head to our Discord if you're interested in talking with us. We'll figure out a way to do that too if you're really, really into talking about Alice in and Wonderland. So, guys, obviously we're going to be talking Alice tonight. We're going to be talking about Lewis Carroll, I'm sure, and his lasting impact upon the fantasy and fairy tale genres. Although Alice is something a little bit apart because he comes at it from a much more, I don't know if you'd call it materialistic, but it's at least mathematical sort of way because he was mathematician.
Do you know who Lewis Carroll is?
Exactly where I was going. You want to introduce us?
So Lewis Carroll is not his name. His actual name was Charles Dodgson. Charles Dodgson was a mathematician in what was the name of this? It's some British city during the Victorian times.
They're all the same.
They're all the same city, you know. I'm sure it's
we'll lose all of our British viewers if we keep going down this path.
All zeros and zeros of our British viewers. Oxford.
Yes, we have one that's in the Brood. Don't be like that. He doesn't come in very often, but I believe George is the name. I don't remember.
On the Discord.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so he's cool. But anyway,
point is, it's Oxford. I looked it up.
It's always Oxford.
It's always Oxford. But Charles Dodgson was a mathematician. He had a number of odd quirks about him, but he was the main important things were he was a very devout Anglican. He was single. He was celibate. And he had a great deal. He felt like it was his duty to entertain and bring joy to children, particularly young girls, because he didn't like boys, but it was not in a weird or fetishistic way. That was something he made very clear in numerous letters to various other people. So before everyone freaks out.
Sure.
No.
Now, I would agree with evidence, but I will say that there were far more allegations during his time than later we get more with Hans Christian Andersen, much later. But we get more during his time with Charles Dodgson. So
because
Right.
Yeah, he made some poor choices.
Yes, he does. Yeah, especially with some family members, that kind of thing. But that's, yeah, if you want to go into that, that's fine. Just to give us some background on who he is. If you don't, it's okay. Either way.
Do we need a content warning on this?
No,
any
no,
younger
not
viewers?
necessarily. No, I don't think so.
No, we don't have to. There are a number of things that I could mention that would involve content warning, but I don't want to mention those right now.
Sure.
The main thing that I want to mention for the purposes of Alice is that one of his frequent pastimes would be to take three girls by the name, I can't remember who the first and the last names were, but the middle child's name was Alice Liddle, Liddle. And as he would take them and they would row out on the river that passes through Oxford or near Oxford on hot summer days, which to me, that just sounds like a recipe for heat stroke and probably why he came up with such crazy stories. But Alice's adventures in Wonderland originated as just oral tales that Lewis would just come up with on the fly while he would row on the river and talk with Alice and her sisters. So, yes, he's going to be heavily influenced by mathematical things, and there's even references to Plato, Aristotle, all of the classic, like a classical education that you would expect from an Oxford mathematic professor. But really, the lion's share of the actual, that's just influence story. I don't think it was really meant to be educational beyond it being in his subconscious when he, was telling the story to entertain children.
Sure, yeah. He was a very interesting guy in that regard, and I would be remiss if I did not quote G.K. Chesterton. This is always something that put me on edge with Alice. There's things that I love about Alice, and there's things that I'm like, you're genre bending in a way that is almost, I wouldn't say disrespectful, but there's times where a borderline is disrespectful to the fairy tale genre in a certain way. But he's also bending it in a way to his own sort of thing. And I'm not saying anything specific immediately, but I think all of it can kind of be tied back to a Chesterton quote. The difference between the poet and the mathematician is that the poet tries to get into his head, or excuse me, get his head into the heavens, while the mathematician tries to get the heavens into his head.
Yeah.
And so
orthodoxy.
Yeah, orthodoxy, right. So what were you going to say, Brendan?
Well, it's actually really interesting that you mentioned Chesterton, because in the introduction to the annotated Alice, somebody actually talks about, and somebody actually quotes Chesterton. The quote is, poor little Alice. She has not only been caught and made to do lessons, but she has been forced to inflict lessons on others. Alice is now not only a schoolgirl, but schoolmistress. The holiday is over and Dodgson is again at dawn. There will be lots of examination papers with questions like, what do you know of the following? Mimsy, Gimble. Record all the moves in the chess game and through the looking glass and give a diagram. And outline practical policy of the White Knight dealing with social problems of the Green Whiskers. So Chesterton himself wasn't particularly opposed to Alice.
Right. No, not at all.
For what it was.
Yeah. But he's not opposed to Alice. Alice gives a very, it's a very daydreamy thing, Alice in Wonderland. Not just Wonderland itself, but it gives a bleak idea that the fantastic is something that is inside us, that and we are ultimately trapped and must retreat inward, as opposed to most other fantasy and fairy tales where we are swept into a world bigger than our own.
I'm not sure where you're getting that.
Okay.
Because frankly, I mean, there might be a point. I don't remember if at the end of Wonderland or in the Looking Glass, Alice wakes up right from a dream. I don't remember.
Yes. Yeah, that's Adventures of Alice in Wonderland, which I wanted to get to. And I'm not just bad mouthing Alice. Yeah. There's things that I really like, including that ending, which I'm going to be bringing up soon.
But even if you accept the whole, it's all a dream ending. It is kind of annoying. I will happily admit that is like a frustration, but I don't like, to me, the whole point of like, if you follow the events, Alice in Wonderland doesn't have a plot.
Right.
It's just a series of connected events, which makes sense given where it came from. It was like, you can picture, like, I could picture my father, right, coming up with something to entertain me when I was like 3,
Sure,
and telling me, picture this, and then he sort of like writes himself into a corner, and so not writes himself into a corner. He's like, okay, well, you're going through and there's a door. Well, okay, now the door is too small, so she needs to shrink. So how's she going to do that? Well, she drinks a bottle, and oh, whoops, she grows big. It's that's the wrong bottle, and then she cries and creates a lake and is able to grab the bottle and drink it, and then she shrinks down, but now she's too small, and so now the tears that she cried and made a pool, what was a puddle, now is a lake, and she has to swim, and she runs into a mouse.
Right.
And it's more bouncy, just going along.
Right. This is D&D. This like, I agree with you there. It's kind of D&D. Alex, go ahead.
No, as far as it goes, you're right. It doesn't have a plot. The only thing that I have heard several different people that I've listened to say about Alice in Wonderland is there was the first children's book to not have a point. Like, it was specifically designed to not have a point, to just be a fun tale.
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
That sounds accurate. Yeah.
That's not incorrect. It was literally just designed to be amusement.
Right.
And shut off your brain, enjoy the funny story.
Right. And my point with that is, you cannot make something, you can make something that is without point, like you're saying, but you still have motive in making something without a point.
Yeah.
And I am arguing that the general structure of Alice in Wonderland has a bent that makes it seem as though you can create, Alice is something that is a story to entertain, and entertainment is a for its own sake thing that has no bearing or relevance upon the greater world, right? This was taking Lewis and Tolkien's idea, obviously different time. I'm not disputing time, but it's the same idea that we need to get away from John Bunyan and all his allegorical nonsense and all the moralistic of the Puritans and etc., and just get back to just having a story. While that is true in one sense, it negates the idea that you can have an inherent message without spelling it out, or even with spelling it out, like afterward, right? And I think he was pushing so hard against it that he created the Seinfeld of fairy tale stories, and was in essence saying that yes, he was so sort of inadvertently saying, yes, math and logic are the only things, but these are the things that keep you sane. In Willy Wonka's words, a little nonsense now and then is cherished by the wisest men, right? I have issue with that premise, but go ahead.
I don't think he's going off of that premise at all.
Okay.
Alice was 10 years old when he was telling these stories to her. And yeah, you can add moralistic things in, but like this, at the moment when he was telling her the stories, he was just doing it to entertain.
Sure. Yeah. I agree with that.
And so within the context of Alice, I don't think that it's like, I don't think he would disagree with you that entertainment itself is valuable. Of course he thinks entertainment itself is valuable.
I'm not. I'm saying he's saying that, and I'm saying something different.
So what are you saying?
So
I don't understand.
So I'm saying that all whether you are inserting it or whether you are putting it in semi-consciously, all stories have inherent moral and value and morals, you know, and et cetera, and point to them. They all have telos, and to make something purposefully against that denotes that you think that something is purposeless. In his case, it's either that math and sciences are ultimately purposeless and you need to exert your will upon it in a sort of a, you know, what's the term? It's an E word, not esoteric. It's what Joss Whedon is. That's a philosophy. No, it's not egalitarian. It's help me chat if anyone's listening. It's the idea that you are the one creating the meaning. You are the one supplying the meaning.
Oh, existentialist.
Existentialist. It's either an existentialist thing where math and logic are the only real things and thus you are supplying the meaning, or it's the reverse where essentially math and science and logic are ridiculous and the only things that are real are your own imagination. Like that. I realize
I don't
it's
think he's saying either.
Okay. I have an exhibit A, but
no idea how you're getting this out of him.
I have an exhibit A, but I'm kind of trying to wait until after the first break.
Okay.
Well, for you might want to exhibit A now because you've lost me, and we can talk about like we can springboard maybe in break 2 and talk about Walt Disney's adaptation, and then go on like to break 3 and talk about all the other adaptations and how everything is different. Because for me, the story structure of Alice is what is like extremely important.
Sure.
Because, and not just the story structure of Alice, but the characters and how they get remade. Because what ends up happening, spoiler alert for future discussion, everybody takes Alice and treats it not like a story, but as a setting.
Yes.
And they put their own story and their own ideas and their own thoughts into Alice in Wonderland and doll up the characters to be nothing like what Lewis Carroll actually made.
Existentialism. Anyway, Alex, go ahead.
But that's not Lewis Carroll.
Right, I know. I wasn't saying it was. Go ahead.
Yeah. Just wanting to offer a vocabulary distinction between entertainment and amusement.
Sure, yes.
Because I would, once again, I haven't read the book in a long time, and I just rewatched the Disney movie, so I'm not qualified to speak to Lewis Carroll or what he was doing or anything like that. But from what I've heard, if he's trying to tell a story with no meaning, that's amusement. Shut your brain off. As opposed to entertainment, which can have broader meaning behind it, that's trying to push something. And that's the distinction that I'd like to draw there.
Sure.
Entertainment can be good. Amusement is always bad. This is Postman, amusing yourselves to death.
Sure. And I agree with entertainment can be good, amusement is always bad, except the problem is I don't think he was making something that had no meaning.
Right.
Per se.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like because like I think he was trying to entertain to a certain degree, but if we're now we're getting into the problem of being too definitive with our definitions, because I do not think that he wouldn't like. Okay, so Jim Butcher is an author. He writes primarily the Dresden Files. He's also written The Aeronaut's Windlass recently. One of the things that he harps on about is that don't preach harder than you can write.
Yeah.
He writes extremely entertaining, and I mean entertaining, books. But for him, the story is what is important. He does not like message fiction. Alice in Wonderland might be a radical push against message fiction, but I don't think he was actively thinking of that. I think he was thinking, how can I bring joy to this child's life with this story? And he's a mathematician. He's not a writer.
Right.
And that's why I think you get the dream ending.
Right, which I'm about to get to.
He writes himself into a corner and he goes, shoot, how do I get myself out of this? I know it was all a dream.
Right.
Now, is that a conscious decision or a subconscious decision? Maybe in that subconscious decision, he accidentally said all this is meaningless or whatever.
Right.
But it wasn't his intention, which to do that, his intention is to entertain a child, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old, I believe, were the three ages. I think they were 2 years apart, but I could be wrong on that front.
Okay.
You know?
So
and so that's why I'm pushing back against this, because it's like, well, what? You could say Alice in Wonderland doesn't have like it's wild. There's no like consistent world building. You know, you can make all of these arguments, but I don't think that means that it's somehow insidious.
Okay. No, I wasn't saying it was necessarily. No. Let me be clear, and then we can get into break. And when we come back, we'll read the dream ending, because that's actually where I begin my exhibit A. And because I think it's actually brilliant, I really do. But I think that if it's not intentional, this is why it's easily hijacked, kind of a thing. So either way. But we will get back to that here in just a moment. We're going to go to our first commercial break. I'm not going to do the Sergeant Ollie stuff tonight. We're just going to go into it, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Attention all Christian writers and creative peoples. Are you searching for a place to share your work and receive encouragement from fellow wordsmiths? Look no further than the Broodcast. Inspired by the legendary Inklings of old, a group of writers who banded together during the Second Great War. The Broodcast is your monthly gathering for inspiration, fellowship, and critique. Join us as we share our stories and support our fellow soldiers on our creative missions. Enlist in the Broodcast community today at joshuadavidling.com/brood. Travel cyberspace. Serve the greatest cause. Join the ranks of the Brood today.
In the heart of Atlanta, a city teetering on the edge of chaos, 4 extraordinary individuals rise as the Guardians of Atlanta, an unstoppable force against the encroaching shadows. William Crusader Avery, a knight with unwavering faith, leads this divergent team, joined by Cirrus Cyclone Jones, a weather controller gifted with angelic power. Bobby the Great Phantasma Carter, a master illusionist capable of bending light itself. And Amira Mira Kadru, a seemingly innocent young woman with the ability to copy powers and knowledge. As part of the coalition of underground resistances against global empire, Courage, they stand as city's last line of defense against political machinations and ancient evils seeking to plunge Atlanta into darkness once more. Brace yourself for a thrilling journey into the world of Courage universe, where epic poetry meets superheroes in Guardians of Atlanta, an electrifying serial releasing continuously in ebook, MP3, and animated.
And I lied, or Joshua lied about me actually being on the show. We're back on Poets at War.
All right, so guys, we're gonna go ahead and read the ending of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Spoiler alert for 1907 book. If anyone wants to go, whatever.
Public domain in 1907.
Yeah, exactly. Public domain in 1907, exactly. So, any which way, just this last little bit here. But her sister sat still just as she left her, leaning her head on her hand, watching the setting sun, and thinking of little Alice and all her wonderful adventures, till she too began dreaming after a fashion. And this was her dream. This is Alice's older sister, okay? First she dreamed of little Alice herself, and once again the tiny hands were clasped upon her knee, and the bright eager eyes were looking up into hers. She could hear the very soft tones of her voice and see that queer little toss of her head to keep back the wandering hair that would always get into her eyes. She could hear and still, as she listened, or seemed to listen, the whole place around her became alive with the strange creatures of her little sister's dream. The long grass rustled at her feet as the white rabbit hurried by. The frightened mouse splashed his way through the neighboring pool. She could hear the rattle of the teacups as the March Hare and his friends shared their never-ending meal, and the shrill voice of the Queen ordering off her unfortunate guests to execution. Once more the pig baby was sneezing on the Duchess's knee, while plates and dishes crashed around it. Once more the shriek of the griffin, the squeaking of the lizard's slate pencil, and the choking of the suppressed guinea pigs, filled with air, mixed up with the distant sobs of the miserable mock turtle. So she sat on with closed eyes and half believed herself in Wonderland, though she knew she had to open them again, and all the world would change to dull reality. The grass would be only rustling in the wind, and the pool rippling to the waving of the reeds, the rattling shepherd boy and the sneeze of the baby. The shriek of the griffin and all the other queer noises would change, she knew, to the confused clamor of the busy farmyard, while the lowing of the cattle in the distance would take the place of the mock turtle's heavy sobs. Lastly, she pictured to herself how this same little sister of hers would, in the aftertime, be herself a grown woman, how she would keep, through all her riper years, the simple and loving heart of her childhood, and how she would gather about her other little children and make their eyes bright and eager with many strange tales, perhaps even with the dream of Wonderland of long ago, and how she would feel with all their simple sorrows and find a pleasure in all their simple joys, remembering her own childhood and the happy summer days. All right, and thus ends that reading. Now, there are two ways to take that, and there are you could take either as his and I think you've made a good case, Brendan. I'm not going to fight you on his intention, but you can make the case either way for his intention. I think you're right, actually, but other people, especially if you take that second to last paragraph and don't backfill it with the final paragraph, that people can really, really take this and turn this into childhood is fleeting, and then there's only death and dumb and dull stuff after that. The whole fact that that Alice's sister considers the world around her to be dull leaves a horrible taste in my mouth. While at the same time, the final paragraph talking about how important childhood is and how we need to not only keep that, but pass it on to other children. Like that's a wonderful thing too, but he does it with kind of a rosy-eyed nostalgic vibe that halfway works for me, halfway doesn't. And so this is me being literary critique. I'm not even talking about intentions at this point. I'm talking about how easily this is hijacked, for one, and then also how, generally speaking, like there's good and bad here, because God's world is amazing, and Frodo would be like, what, you have giant machines that fly through the air? Anyway. But
we had to use eagles to do that. What are you talking about?
Exactly, yeah. And they weren't exactly reliable.
They were very reliable.
When it counted. When it counted.
You could rely on them to do what was best for the eagles.
There you go.
That's true.
So yeah, I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that, or on the ending in general, and gush about it. Go ahead, like whatever you want to do.
Does this kind of get into Death of the Author?
Explain for the audience. I know what you're talking about, but go ahead.
How much the author's intention matters in a given work.
Right.
So, like, there seems to be two predominant opinions. One, the author has absolute say over what they've written for all time.
Right.
Like, the author's word is final.
This is the episode I want to do with Benjamin. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. This is what I wrote. This is what I meant. That is the not death of the author position. The death of the author position is that once the author has written the thing, it is no longer theirs. It is now the reader's.
Right.
And the reader gets the final understanding of the final interpretation of what was written.
Right.
I take a middle ground position in that once the author has written the thing, the text has the final authority and the correct reading of the text. Now, that is very often, it's very often helpful to understand where the author was coming from so that you can better understand what the text is saying. But the classic example here is J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter. I haven't read any of the books. I've only watched the first movie. But from what I understand, Dumbledore isn't gay in the books.
Right, he's not.
Like, he's not said to be gay in the books. She retconned that and said, no, he was always gay in the books, even though it's not in the text.
Right.
Yeah.
It is in the movies, but it's not in the text.
Right.
And
it is in later movies. It's not even in the original movies. It's something that they put in the
Fantastic Beasts movies
of Grindelwald.
Yeah. All those,
yeah. But that's my position, is that the text actually has the final authority. Once the text is written, the author doesn't get to go back and change it and say, I always meant this. I always meant this. Well, if it's not in the text, sorry, that's invalid there. Now, if you are saying, okay, this is the intention, and then you can go back and find it hidden in the text, that's great. That's fantastic. But it's the text's authority, not yours.
So we can get into that a little bit.
That's my personal position. I have a middle ground there. But is that kind of what the distinction is? Because Brendan is arguing that Lewis Carroll wasn't trying to do that.
Right.
He wasn't trying to destroy the foundations of story. And it seems like the general argument is that, but he kind of did anyway. Even if he wasn't trying to, the means by which he was using to bring joy ended up sowing the seeds of the destruction of, like,
well, it's really more childlike wonder than story. It's really more childlike wonder that is the thing in question, more so than stories or story structure. I don't think this is so much of I'm not arguing from a death of the author position at all. My position is using my position is very esoteric, and we can get into that if we ever get to the Benjamin episode. But I believe what God says about a work is true. Now, coming across what that means and what God says, because what God says about everything is true, right? Like that's a whole other thing. Okay, I'm not going to get into that right now, and I'm not saying that God says exactly the same thing as me necessarily. But what I'm trying to get to with this is, regardless of Lewis Carroll's intention, does the text, as you would say, not a death of the author, but does the text provide a helpful or unhelpful view of the thing in question, which is, I would argue, childlike wonder and imagination? And I would argue it does and it doesn't. If you take the thing as the whole, I would argue that is exactly what he's trying to do. And his loss of it, and his mourning the loss of it, and his seeming like he has no hope for it to ever come back for himself, is the thing that makes it feel like a downer more than an upper to me.
I think he was just trying to acknowledge sin.
Okay.
Or maybe not sin, but the estate of misery. More so than
atrophy, yeah.
sin.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Atrophy.
I think that obviously you want to save it. I always, and I will die on this hill, put more. Okay, I say I'll die on this hill. I like actually Alex's idea of the text is being the authority. The problem that I have with that is that for me, I like to ground everything in how God made the world. And for
I agree
me,
with that.
God's word, his intention, though we might not understand it, his intention, it trumps any interpretation and any like now, the text. Now that gets complicated because the word Jesus is the word, right? So the word is living. God's word is living. And so that makes things hairy and complicated and all that. But this is why I always put so much weight on authorial intent.
I give you GIF versus GIF.
I don't care. Graphics interchange format.
Right. Yes. Anyway.
But actually, but your idea of like the text being the final word, I like that stance. I would still put more weight on the authorial side than the
absolutely.
Than the reader side. Sure. But I'm willing actually to go, all right, no, I'll shake hands with you on that one. But the author still needs to have more weight in the judgment than the reader, and because we're human.
Yes.
Humans are, there's one thing that all of humanity is good at, and that is screwing up.
Yep.
So this goes both ways. This will cut both ways. From an interpretive standpoint, this means that we can miss things in the text, or we will see things in the text that aren't there.
Yeah.
But wait, this also means from an author standpoint, the author could not have the skill to execute on what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think if I'm going to be now actually charitable and try to extend an olive branch to Joshua,
I'm not trying to fight.
Doing that. I know, but I am. So fight me. This is a instance where Lewis Carroll or Charles Dodgson or whatever name you want to use, he goes by Lewis Carroll, so I'll say Lewis Carroll. This is where Lewis Carroll's lack of skill starts to kind of poke through and allows for some of that. I don't want to call it nihilism because I don't think it's full-blown nihilism.
It's more existentialism or the reverse. But
some of his, I think, because I find it really interesting because one of the things that I was talking about in the annotated Alice is that he felt a connection with young girls, because back in Victorian times, young girls were like the epitome, like perfect, like image of sexual purity, innocence, all of the good virtues, right?
The whole cherubic romance, yeah.
Well, no, not cherubic romance, because Carroll was single his whole life.
I didn't mean romance like erotic romance. I just meant like romanticized.
Romanticized. Okay, fair. But Lewis Carroll was single his whole life. He was, he didn't have any sexual desire in and of himself. So he felt that connection. And I think the fact that he was a grown man in this world weighed on him. And so that misery of that, and the fact that he could not be sort of like within that sort of paradigm of like you are perfect, you are great, but you're going to grow up and you're going to stop being perfect. And that bled through into that ending. I think that's what you're seeing there. I don't think it's exactly that existentialist idea per se. I think it's more of a commentary on the misery of the world and a commentary on Victorian ideals of what is good.
Oh,
and
yeah.
how
Yeah. And that's one way you can take it too. Yeah.
Eventually goes away.
But yeah, the question is, does it have to? And it seems to me he either doesn't want to say either way, or he is saying that it is doomed.
I don't think he's saying it's doomed.
Okay.
Because he's saying because of the last paragraph that you mentioned.
Yeah.
The fact that the last paragraph is you pass it on. It's you will lose this eventually.
Right.
But you can give it to others.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what he's trying to go there. Anyway, are we ever actually going to talk about Disney?
I mean, we can. I just definitely wanted to get to some of that, and it's a good teaser for if we can actually get Benjamin on, because he has heavy opinions on this, and we've gone round and round on it before, and I want to do it again. But
Benjamin and I going at it, I'm afraid.
You, me, and Benjamin and Alex. It'll be so much fun.
Yeah. It's gonna be chaos incarnate.
I get to hey,
that's his show.
My podcast.
That's Alex's
podcast. Yeah, no, I get to play ringside announcer to that one. That'll be fun.
Like wrong button.
Like this sort of a thing right here. Benjamin swings, etc. No. Except now it's still bleeping.
There we go. Okay. OBS. Why are you being annoying? Okay, there we go.
I like you.
That being said, yeah, why don't we get to some of the Disney stuff? Alex, you're the most recent watcher, I think, of this one. Not the ancestors of the Nephilim, but the person who viewed the film. Yeah, you said you watched up to the beginning of the trial, which
up
is
to the trial scene.
Very close to the end anyway.
Yeah.
So, given we've been going through Disney and kind of specifically talking about them, but also the origins of these stories, etc., and the fact that Walt Disney kept coming back to Alice, which I always thought was interesting, because he started with Mickey Mouse and then did the Alice Adventures and Laugh-O-Grams and whatever, like all these other Alice projects. What did you think of the Alice film?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I'm trying to remember where this falls in the timeline. It's right after Sleeping Beauty, right?
I believe so. I will look on the exact dates while you continue speaking.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it's right after Sleeping Beauty. If so, this is the best animated film up to that point. It's just really fantastic animation. Especially stuck out to me the opening scene in the real world, how well the moving elements blended in with the static elements. That's always something very interesting that you can notice about hand-drawn animation, is that anything that moves is going to be written or going to be drawn in a different style. I'm not sure exactly how to explain that than the rest of it, and it wasn't. Like, it was just fantastically well done animation to where it looked like it was all done on one plane. Just fantastic. That stood out to me specifically. The colors, the vibrancy of the entire thing is just fantastic. Cheshire Cat is great. I love Cheshire Cat.
Did you know that the Cheshire Cat and Winnie the Pooh are voice acted by the same person?
Yes, that's Sterling Holloway.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I did not know that until I was like 25, and it blew my mind.
See, I also knew him as a whole bunch of other characters like Kaa in the Jungle Book, and also he does a long-term narrator role in the movie The Three Caballeros, and that was the one that I knew him from the most. He's
Caballeros.
But no, I really like that one. It's very funny. He's narrating the story of a penguin who wants to go to the equator because he hates being cold. And it is adorable. And the penguin's name is Pablo. But anyway,
okay then.
So Alice came in the timeline immediately the year after Cinderella, and the year 2 years before Peter Pan. So that gives you an idea of where it falls.
Okay, Cinderella has pretty similar quality to the animation.
Yeah, I would. Say, I think better story overall,
it's just all.
Yeah, I think better story overall, story treatment of the original text kind of thing. But I do think that Alice has a lot of amazing stuff in it too. I think the big thing that sticks out to me for Alice in Wonderland is the voice acting. I love the March Hare. I love Edwin as the Mad Hatter. Even your a lot of staples for Disney before and to come really got going in this movie, and all of the over the top performances, the Queen of Hearts, I'm trying to think that the Walrus, even though it's a brief part, I love that dude's voice. But there's just so many Tweedledee and Tweedledum doing their weird off Irish accents.
Their entire section is just that's a great section.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, go ahead.
My favorite, I mean, aside from the Cheshire Cat, my favorite thing is when after the tea party where Alice is walking through the woods and there's this dog that has a broom for a face that's literally erasing the thing, and it's doing it to this music, and the face is sweeping as the drum to the music. This I don't know why, but that part always sticks out in my head as like such a good like capturing of Alice, like the movie, of just weird what the nonsense.
Right.
That is, anyway.
And this is one of the things that I think this is the reason Walt Disney picked up on Alice so much early on, and then just kept going until he finally said, we need to make the full-length feature animation, right? And he even wasn't fully pleased with it, but decided not to go back to it because he's like, well, we spent all this money, we can't keep coming back to this, kind of a thing. We gotta keep moving forward. But he knew that animation was about two things: storytelling and gags. And the gags were, the thing that everyone was creating, but he knew that it could be a greater storytelling medium too. And so he thought, what's the bridge? Alice in Wonderland's a great bridge for gags and good storytelling. It just really is. Like the whole story, the setting, the whole 9 yards. It's great for both of those things. And what you just described is a gag. It's a traditional cartoon gag. And I think that's the thing that Tolkien hated particularly. And Lewis said he hated when he saw like Seven Dwarfs. But at the same time, Lewis employed gaggery, if you will, in his books. The lamppost itself is a gag.
Yeah.
It's a visual gag, right? And this is the thing that we have to balance as storytellers is what's the weird, strange, interesting thing. This is something Miyazaki does incredibly well. Things like things like just the ennui of things like No Face. Yeah, just like and just the weird presence of these creatures and characters and things. And speaking of Alice in Wonderland, Spirited Away is kind of like Alice in Wonderland in a lot of ways, and he's even said that. But but like, just
I would argue Totoro is more, but
yes, I would agree. But he definitely has a lot of Alice influence, and
of course.
So like, I guess what I'm trying to say is this is something that I really admire about both the Disney film and the story is it has a place for gags. I would argue it doesn't do the other thing as well, the storytelling element, but it, like you were saying, it may not be supposed to be. It's more like a cartoon, like an old school cartoon.
Well, actually, I think what Disney does really well is stick close to Carol's story.
Yes, I do agree with that.
Because remember, Carol's story is told over months. as he does these boat rides with these girls. Maybe not months, but like, it's not all sat down and done in one day. He was doing like little things. And he goes, when last we left off, Alice just ate a toadstool and grew big.
Right.
Right. Or whatever, and then, bumps into whatever. It's more Odyssey, where it's a series of individual like little moments,
right,
loosely connected by, she was here, all right, what would she do in this situation? Well, maybe she would wander this way, or maybe she would actually try to eat the thing, or whatever, as opposed to like any of the other stories of Alice in Wonderland, particularly Tim Burton's, but any of the other stories of Alice in Wonderland that you get, where it is, here is the goal that you need to do, and she is constantly working toward that in a normal story.
Yeah. The biggest advantage that Disney's Alice in Wonderland has against over and against Burton's or any others is that it doesn't have a plot.
Exactly.
Which is a weird criticism to levy against every other version. Oh yeah, sorry, you screwed up. You have a plot, but
no. But this is something that we can talk about, right? Because, we'll probably have to do another break, and then we can talk about all the other versions, because oh my gosh, there are so many versions, and I want to talk about all of them.
Yes, please.
This is where I get excited, really. Like, we can whatever, but like I'm really excited about the other version stuff and how to completely deconstruct them. But My Neighbor Totoro, I brought that up for a reason, because My Neighbor Totoro doesn't have a plot either. The story is about two girls moving to the countryside and the various adventures that they have there with the forest spirits. The only time there is a direct cause and effect happens at the very end, where, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen My Neighbor Totoro, I mean, I'd say go watch it, but if you haven't seen it by now, you're probably not going to. Where a little girl runs off to try to give corn to her mother to make her feel better. And then the older sister runs around and goes to the forest spirit to try to, to save her, to find her sister and to get her back and save her. That's the only time where there is a direct, all right, A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D.
Are we losing Brendan?
I think so.
Fun. Let's see if he comes back.
We've lost him.
Oh no.
We've been visited by the oracular pig again.
Oracular pig. I need that on the soundboard.
Oracular pig.
So, with that being said, I think that the storytelling function of this, I think that, this is the thing that I have a hard time with, is it really depends on your definition of plot, because if you take into account the ending of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, it does have a plot. It does have a point. It does have all these other sorts of things.
He crashed.
Oh, I did too? I'm
no,
still
he
here.
did.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he crashed. Oh, you're talking to him, I guess. And so basically, like, with all that being said, the is he coming back? Is he coming back?
He said he is. He'll be back in a second. But it's like his computer crashed as opposed to just the internet.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up sort of the exact opposite of Alice in Wonderland, except that they, quote, don't have a plot, although I argue they both do in a sense. Napoleon Dynamite. There he is. Is he back?
Apologies, I crashed.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, anyway.
We're live,
I was
people.
Just saying, live. We're doing it live. Anyway, I was just saying that that's the only time at the end of Totoro where events are like very directly cause A, because of A, they do B, because of B, they do C.
Right.
Whereas the rest of the movie, it's just kind of disjointed events happening.
Right.
So yeah.
And I brought up very briefly while you were away, Napoleon Dynamite. In many ways, the inverse of Alice, where nothing is going on. But at the same time, quote unquote, no plot. I don't like that phrase, because all of these kind of have a point to the ending and they're all moving in a direction. To me, that is a plot, but it's very loose. Very, very loose for all of these. And in Napoleon Dynamite, ultimately, what's the story? Small town boy who thinks he's never going to amount to anything does good. That's basically the story. You know, Alice is a girl who never thinks she's going to get anywhere, and all the world is just stories, has an adventure that twists her brain around, and she has an amazing imagination that inspires the people around her. You know? Yeah, sure. And yeah, so I can't go into Totoro as well because it's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah. Any which way, now's a good time to get to break. Alex, did you have anything before we go to break?
I don't think so.
All right, then, we'll try to move to another commercial break. We'll be right back in the trenches on Poets at War.
Are you looking for thought-provoking Christian perspectives that bring unity across denominations? Then you'll want to check out Logosophia magazine. As a free online interdenominational publication, Logosophia publishes a variety of creative works like articles, stories, and poems on different theological themes each quarter. Their goal is to have respectful conversations that highlight our shared beliefs outlined in the Apostles', Nicene, and Athanasian creeds, as we clarify our differences. So if you want to dive deeper into your faith while learning from other Christian expressions, subscribe to Logosophia magazine today on their website or listen to their podcasts. We look forward to journeying with you.
I'm Ian Wilson, and I create graphic art using primarily traditional methods, supplementing with digital where it's needed. I use a real pen, a real paper, a real graphite to make my art. I like to feel my art. I've always been this way. I love the feeling of a pen or pencil in my hand, the sound of graphite scratching paper, and I love the sight of a nice black line making its way across the page. So why choose traditional art over digital? Traditional art has an organic, natural quality that seems to be missing from most digital illustrations. The illustrated books and comics that were made in the days before digital have an excellence and staying power that is just as vibrant now as it was decades ago. These are the stories that stay with you. Dr. Seuss, Winnie the Pooh, Where the Wild Things Are. People still read these. I'm currently working on my own graphic novel series, Legend of the Swordbearer, and I've also had the privilege to draw graphics for 2 motion comic series, along with illustrations for a small magazine, Logosophia magazine, and various book covers. Don't let traditional art fade into the dust. Help me keep it alive. You won't regret it. Visit my website at ianthomaswilson.com for more.
And we're back from into the trenches, into Wonderland, through the looking glass on Poets at War.
See, I say I'm not gonna do Ollie because we're having technical difficulties, and we even had an oracular pig during the break. But like, good gracious,
yeah,
I can't stop
Those
it.
darned oracular pigs.
It's just too fun.
But yeah,
you can't help it.
So
a little nonsense now and then is cherished by the wisest men. It's too much fun.
I need a different kind of button that I can press, so I don't keep pressing that one. So
get an Inception button that just goes bwah.
Bwah. That sounds fun. There you go.
I agree with this. I think that this is a great idea.
Or get the sound from the dramatic chipmunk thing, or dramatic groundhog. Dun, dun, dun. Anyway.
Dun dun dun.
So Brendan, let's get to your fun time horse that you gotta slap all the time. All the variations of Alice.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let me just tell you all of the things that I know of that have strong references to Alice in Wonderland.
Go for it.
We have American McGee's Alice. This was a video game that got us American McGee's Alice 2. It is a horror Alice in Wonderland game that I used to describe as what would happen if Tim Burton made Alice in Wonderland. But then Tim Burton actually made Alice in Wonderland, and so now I can't describe it like that anymore.
Also, they're nothing alike.
And they're nothing alike. Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. Speaking of which, we've got that. There is an Alice in Wonderland in Once Upon a Time. There is Alice in Wonderland. There was a TV show where Alice in Wonderland, where Alice goes to Wonderland and finds out it is turned into a dystopian Hunger Games style world where all of the creatures are enslaved by the queen and she is sucking all of the feelings out of them. And the Mad Hatter has a super right hook that can punch through concrete, but he's got like a glass jaw. It's weird. It was like, it was a TV movie series. It was a thing. And then, so we got those. We've got and then I know of there was a manga and an anime called Pandora Hearts, where all of the super-powered entities that you make pacts with are all references to Alice in Wonderland.
There you go.
There are so many stories, and all of them have plots.
This would be great if it had a plot.
But no, this is what I mentioned earlier, where I believe that what people do is they take Alice in Wonderland and they use it as a setting. Right? They take some element, and they don't even have to take the whole thing. They just take what they want. Excuse me, I am coming off of a cold, and that excitement just caused all of the phlegm in my chest to stir up.
Your phlegm wanted to join the party.
Exactly. But that's the thing. Like, the horror Alice in Wonderland story, right? It is very much a mental illness. Like, Alice is mentally ill because she's in an asylum after her house burns down, and as she goes through Wonderland, she reaches the Red Queen to kill her, and the Red Queen is this horrifying monstrosity with Alice's face on it. So she has to kill her own evil, like, mental illness inside her. In the second game, don't play it. Let's just start with that. It's not bad, but it handles very, very heavy and like child abuse style themes. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. Do not play this unless you are absolutely certain that you can handle heavy stuff. That being said, I do not think that they treat the subject matter poorly. I think they do a decent job. There are some things that I'm kind of like, you didn't need to do that. But in the end, it is heavily implied that she goes mad and kills the person who was abusing and selling her sisters into slavery. But in order to do that, she has to become the Alice that is in Wonderland, not the Alice that's in the real world. And it sort of implies that there's sort of like a schizophrenic sort of switch that gets flipped.
Yep.
Because when she leaves the subway where she pushed the guy into the train, you see Wonderland all over the place, even though she's in the real world. And so it's like, there is mental illness going on, blah, 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 blah. Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. I have no idea what the themes are in there, but it was...
Yeah, I'm not sure that anybody knows.
But it's Alice. The plot is Alice returning to Wonderland. That was the whole thing.
Yes.
And so, because there keeps going like, I'm Alice. Are you the Alice? And has my favorite line from the Cheshire Cat, where he goes, Alice, the Alice? There's been some debate about that. I never get involved in politics. Poof. Great line.
Proceeds to get involved in politics throughout the entirety of the next movies.
Well, yeah, but details.
Tim Burton, Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter. Woo, 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 woo.
Well, but that's the thing. Like, one thing that they kind of do, like the characters aren't necessarily consistent across any of these stories. Right? Except one. And it's my favorite character. The Cheshire freaking Cat.
It's everyone's favorite character.
Is always the wild card that keeps the story going.
See, the great thing about the Cheshire Cat is you get a sense that he actually is the only one who knows what the heck is going on, and he ain't telling nobody.
Yeah.
That's what I absolutely love about him. But yeah, it's the same thing with Willy Wonka. It's like he ain't telling nobody.
Yeah, exactly. In American McGee's Alice, you can press a button to get like a hint. The Cheshire Cat is the one that appears and gives you a hint. And like half the time, it's a riddle that doesn't make sense.
Wait, the Cheshire Cat is Clippy?
No, you're not allowed to.
Apple, get on this.
No, you're not allowed to do that. I mean, if you did, then I might have to switch to Apple if Apple did that.
Clippy, yeah. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
No, we're not talking about Clippy. We're not talking about the
Replace Siri with
Joshua.
Shesh.
Oh my gosh, no! But literally, like I don't know how many D&D games that I've put in a talking cat that randomly appears.
Yeah,
because
that's a great idea. I need to do that.
It's a great tool and all of that. But the thing that blows my mind, I say blows my mind. The thing that I just find so interesting is that all of these stories, again, they take elements from Alice in Wonderland. And if they happen to take place in Wonderland, it's nothing like Lewis Carroll's Wonderland.
Yeah.
It is like it might have like some whimsical like visual aesthetic that's similar.
Right.
But there's no plot that's the same.
Right.
Yeah, Tim Burton's didn't really have a plot. It was basically trying to like
there's a war and we're rebelling. Girl boss.
There's a war. Yeah, there's a war. We're rebelling and stuff. And then the second one, it's like time is going weird. Because that's a thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Time is getting rusty.
We have to fix it. How?
We have to
friendship.
Yeah, and in the TV movie where the Mad Hatter can like punch through concrete, it's we're rebelling again. Lots of rebellion stories. I will say that the TV movie, Alice wakes up. And the second person she sees, aside from her mother or her sister, is the Mad Hatter, and it's heavily implied that he came from Wonderland to her so that they could be together.
Fun. That's another thing I have. That's another thing that makes absolutely no sense to me is Burton's thing does a weird like nod to the Mad Hatter and Alice being a thing too, and I'm just like, where in the world is this coming from?
He's the only human
fiction writers.
Is that it?
He's the only human character.
What about the king? Is it because he's married?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Does the king exist in the Burton version?
No.
I didn't think so.
In the TV movie, but he doesn't exist in the Burton version. Although I have to admit, going back and like skimming through Alice, I find it hilarious that there was an argument going on by the executioner. The executioner was explaining to the queen that he could not execute the Cheshire Cat because the Cheshire Cat was at the time was only a head, and he cannot separate a head from a body if there is no body.
Yes.
I need to reread this book.
And the queen,
it is so
weird,
the
queen basically says something to the effect of, I mean, she just yells at him, but like the general thing that, if I remember correctly, she's like, why does this matter? What is your problem? Logic? We don't have logic here.
But like,
do what I say. I am logic. God darn it.
Yeah, I like, this is like, again, Alice in Wonderland became public domain in 1907.
Yep.
So there's been a long time where people, like anyone, can grab it and use it however they please.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, we can quibble about whether or not public domain is a good idea, but and that would go back to authorial intent, which we're not, and death of the author, which we're not talking about because this is not that episode. But,
Benjamin, we need you. It's going to be fun.
Benjamin, you don't listen to these, but Benjamin, please.
We're all mad here. No, he occasionally listens.
He occasionally listens, but like, I don't know. It's again, the manga anime, not the anime, because the anime they ran out of content because they tried to produce it before the manga was finished, and so they pulled a Game of Thrones and ran out of content before.
Classic.
Anyway, do not watch the
Always
anime.
a good
It's so
decision.
bad. Read the manga. It's actually really interesting and really good. But in the like in the manga, the main characters all have these they basically form pacts with these beings that are basically demons. But the demons are things like the Mad Hatter, the Cheshire Cat, the Dormouse, all characters. Yes, Dormouse, the thing that's asleep. The character is a narcoleptic because of this pact he made with the Dormouse. It's hilarious.
Okay.
It's
I have
also
to read
terrifying.
Now we need Haunted Cosmos talking about how Mr. Bean in Rat Race is being possessed by the Dormouse demon. Anyway. The ultimate crossover.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like going to manga is a bad example because the Japanese have this tendency to take Western stories all the time. They will take Western stories and go, we're just going to borrow this and we're going to use it in our own way, and it's going to have nothing to do with the original source material. So
gee, we're not guilty of that either.
No, we totally do that. But that's the thing. With them, it's with them, it's so much more obvious because they're pulling things out of context and just doing whatever they want with it.
Right.
With ours, it's like Tim Burton. Again, it looks like Alice in Wonderland. It almost sounds like Alice in Wonderland. But if you look at Disney, I would argue Disney's is Alice in Wonderland because it's got that feel. Whereas Tim Burton, they actually tried to put a plot in with ideas and themes and war and a character that grows and changes and stuff.
It's the gags.
And I don't mean physically grows.
Yeah.
I don't mean physical. We're not talking about drinking liquid here and becoming the size of a house. It just doesn't work.
Alex.
Yeah. It also just doesn't work on the story level that they were trying to do either, because she doesn't grow that much.
Yep.
Like she has a minor character arc type thing in Underland itself. But she begins the movie and ends the movie in the exact same place. Except for she's a little bit more confident about her.
She's a little more assertive.
Yeah, a little bit more assertive about her. Being upsetness.
Dude, it's been years. Been years since I've seen.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well,
discontentment. That's the word I was looking for.
But that's the thing. I'm wondering, you were listing off all of the IPs that are becoming public domain, in the Brood.
Yep.
And we could, the Rings of Power is so bad, right?
It's so bad.
And
I watched the first episode and nearly died.
That's not even public domain yet, so we can't even use that excuse. So what is it about people taking other stories, adapting their setting, and writing their own story in that setting?
Money.
That's just fan fiction.
Yeah, it's money. It's money because it's a recognizable IP.
What question are you asking?
Right.
Well, it's money. That's the producer's answer.
But
I want to know from the author's answer.
No. The author is being paid. It's money for the author too.
I guess. I don't know. I just feel like,
and that's not a bad thing. Let me be clear to everyone.
I understand the question that you're asking. You're saying, what do we do about it?
No, I don't think it's what we
do about it. I'm asking,
what is the motive?
Yeah. What?
Okay. It's a why question, not a what.
And let me
question.
just be clear. Okay. Money is a good thing. I like it. You should send me some, guys listening. But here's the thing. Okay,
I am dying over here off camera.
Oh, you should be. Anyway, but this is the point, right? Like people want. I'm going to take this all the way back. This is why I have issues with the rose-colored glasses of Lewis Carroll Alice and a lot of the Alices that follow along, because they're looking at Alice through a rose-colored glass and going, oh, I remember Alice being strong and brave, and oh, I'm going to put this in. It's like my general impressions of Alice that I'm just going to map onto these things, right? And generally speaking, people want to re-experience their childhood as opposed to having new, enlightening, enchanting experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Because they think that they are so far gone as adults that they can't ever go back. And in a sense, yes, you are not going to have a time where you're in your father's house and he's completely taking care of you like a baby. But I would assert that any good Christian, especially a good Christian artist, wants that anyway. You want to honor God, follow the rules, and become a better soldier in this war. To love your children, to raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and to be your family's bard. So I can go home with that, but I want to give you guys
I was going to say,
yeah,
we can actually bring that full circle to Chesterton.
Yep.
Again,
go ahead.
Where we kind of started, because in Orthodoxy he talks about the enchantment of being a child and learning these facts for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
That to a child, the story of a caterpillar turning into a butterfly is just as fantastic as the story of St. George killing the dragon, or, you know, The Lord of the Rings.
That's right.
All of these things are just as unknown, just as enchanting, and just as marvelous. And that's something that we lose as we grow up, which is why we end up telling stories, because we're trying to regather that enchantment of, oh, that's new.
Yes. And I think that's what Lewis Carroll,
especially
ultimately,
that's true.
Right. And I think that's what Lewis Carroll intentionally was trying to go for. And this is the thing that I'm trying to get out to everyone else, is like, we can't grow, like, our sin, as Chesterton said once again, orthodoxy, is we've grown older than our father.
Yeah,
that's the way he puts it, and he's using that metaphorically. We have, through sin and atrophy, decided that we know better than we did when we were a child. And we know that because we know things, we're somehow older and greater. And God every day wakes up and says to the plants that open up, you know, every morning, do it again, do it again, do it again.
Yeah.
And he never gets tired
young
of
enough
it.
to exult in monotony.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I only want to push back a little bit, because you stole my thunder, sir. I was going to bring that again up.
Wrap us up, man. Let's do it.
But
Go for it.
Send us home.
For me, it's not so much that, oh, we're so great, we know better, we are, you know. No, I remember there have been times when I have played a game and I finished a game, and for me, it was Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yeah.
Where I I did cry at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2, because I knew I was never going to experience that set of emotions again.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was an amazing story for me at the time, and I was never going to feel it again. Now, did I play through Kingdom Hearts 2 and again, over and over again? Yes, I did. Right? But for me, there's sort of like, it's the same reason why people get all upset about spoilers. Now, I'm also the one who says that if spoiling a movie ruins the movie for you, then the movie wasn't good enough in the first place.
Yeah.
But that's me trying to push back and trying to recapture the do it again. Because the thing that, you know, it's not, yes, it is sad to a certain degree, because we can only experience something for the first time once, in a sense. That is true. But what we need to do is we need to learn the mundane, as you say,
Right.
the enjoyment of the mundane. And honestly, this is something we should do a podcast on
Yeah,
at some point.
we should.
Is the enjoyment of mundane.
Yeah.
Alex, write that down, please. But yeah.
Already got it.
Cool.
Yep.
Because we listen to stories that have such dramatic moments, and then we listen to the adult, or at least growing up in public school, you listen to the adults in your life who tell you you're going to do great things, you can achieve anything you want to achieve, and they hype you up, and you're a person in this. You are one in a million students who are like, yeah, I'm one in a million. I can do anything.
Right.
I can change the
Harry
world.
Potter syndrome.
Harry Potter syndrome, as you called it, all those a couple episodes back. But we need to be okay. And I don't know how we learn to do this, but we need to be okay with with changing diapers every day, with getting up and going to work and being frustrated with the computer or being frustrated with the thing we're editing because it's an hour long and there aren't any good clips to isolate for social media. And so you have to jury rig something, and it's tedious and it's boring because there's only one angle and blah, blah, blah. But we need to find joy in that mundane everyday work. We need to find joy in mundane in weeding.
Yep.
Yes.
We need to find, and that's where, like, trying to pull back what you were mentioning about how God says to the sun every day, do it again, do it again, do it again.
Right.
Do it again. We need to take enjoyment in the stories and read them again anyway, because we enjoyed it the first time. Yeah, we're not going to get that same set of wow, shock, and awe, but maybe we can.
Right.
Maybe we can get that shock and awe again. Maybe we can have that childlike wonder again. So yeah. Anyway,
and I'll just wrap up by saying this really, really quickly, and then I'll do my send off. Not only are you going to have experiences that you can never go back to, but you are, as a Christian, going to have the ability to recapture those for other people and for yourself through memory. To a certain degree, you are finite. However, all of those things are not in vain, because you have a life after this one, where all those things are going to have their permanent and fulfilled basis in the new heavens and the new earth. Every single story that you ever took in and appreciated will have its fullness and culmination in Christ. And we can look forward to that. Everybody, let's see if I can hit the thing. Hold on. Let's see if we can do it. Is it that one? No, that's not.
God of song, said the warrior bard.
That's the one, but it's not the right. Okay. There we go. Okay, that's playing through, but you guys can't hear it. Okay, check. Static Studio, did it mute me?
Professionals.
I know.
Yeah.
It's so good. Unhide all.
We're still working on kinks.
We're still working at it. Yeah, okay, it does say local mic.
Hey, exalting in mundanity.
Exalting in mundanity.
Exalting in mundanity. Exactly. All right, guys. Be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War. Let's go to the end screen.
God of song,